Hey. I want to give a brief update. Today is like day 2 of me really trying to kick it in the next gear since I'm kind of feeling back to normal again for the most part after having COVID. For the first time since I had COVID, so almost like for 2 weeks, today was the first day that I had a good meditation. Today was the first day that I got like in a groove with like journaling slash, you know, my writing project. So I feel so thankful. You know, today was a huge day. I woke up and I had like a normal amount of energy for like the past almost 2 weeks when I had COVID. I just couldn't even wake up. It's like my brain was still asleep like all day long. It was crazy, the residual effects and like physical and mental effects with COVID. But I finally am getting back in a groove and really trying to live kind of, I don't know, just like a more proactive way, and like quit having, you know, excuses like dominate my psyche. So that's great. But I just wanted to, this is the third attempt of making a video kind of about West Virginia, but I just wanted to clear the air, and hopefully I can, the third time will be the charm, and I can kind of get this out there without it being like a rant. Every time I try to talk about West Virginia, you know, I just want to, like I said, give my perspective and kind of clear the air on some things that bother me with the way the state is like constantly still yet portrayed. But it's hard to talk about something that's complicated and you're emotionally connected to, especially in an honest, objective, and compassionate light and a truthful light. You know, you have to give the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so every time I talk about West Virginia, you know, you have to talk about the poverty and coal and kind of the feeling of almost like isolation that a lot of people feel like, you know, disconnected from the government. We kind of like it that way, but it wasn't really by choice. It was like a default liking, like, fuck it, you don't want to help me, well, fuck it, I don't want your help, kind of like that type of mentality that, you know, was honed over decades of being fucked over. So I'm already kind of getting off track. See, like when you talk about, like, I think poverty, if you want to be honest, you have to talk about, you know, why, especially with like generational poverty, multi-generational poverty. And I just don't want it to be like, well, these people need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, because that's what, you know, of course, that is what it is, you know, free will, personal accountability, that's like all you can control. But, you know, if pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, just saying no, just, you know, eat less, move more, you know, if it was just that easy, then everybody would be fucking living a passion-filled, amazing life. And most people do not, you know. So to really get into like the reasons of why people are down, why people stay down, you know, why it's easier to stay down when you're born down, you know, all those things. When you start talking about poverty and the reasons behind it, a lot of times you do have to talk about government fuckery. And I'm going to try to keep the tangents to a minimum here and keep this like less than 10 minutes. But basically, you know, I just now at this point in my life, in the past like few years, have really discovered an appreciation for my state, and just an acceptance, and also a genuine affection and a love for my state. You know, most of my life I hated West Virginia. I perpetuated many negative stereotypes, like just with spreading my point of view, and just kind of like this, oh God, there's fucking nothing here, this is a shithole. You know, just a really negative perspective. And, you know, the reason why I was shitting on my home state and the only place I've ever lived thus far is because I was fucking miserable. You know, it's not a coincidence. I mean, I just come to realize this. It's not a coincidence that I developed like a love for and appreciation for my state. At the same time, I developed a love and appreciation for myself, and a love for life, and an appreciation for life as well. You know, miserable people have miserable things to say. They just do. They, you know, if you're either rich or ignorant and or miserable, those are the people who have like the shitty takes. Those are the people who don't have nothing good to say. Those are the people who perpetuate ignorance and stereotypes. The rich, the ignorant, and or the miserable, you know. And I was fucking miserable for a really long time, and I was ignorant for a long time, you know. But so when you see somebody like shitting on a place, and it's like, well, wait a second, how much time have you been there, you know? What do you really know? Have you like passed through? Have you been to West Virginia at all? You know, did you live there? What were you doing when you were there? I mean, because a lot of people that talk shit about West Virginia are people like I was, just fucking miserable drug addicts who feel stuck in a state because they're stuck in their minds and stuck in their own like private hell. And you take your own private hell and your fucking shitty dickhead point of view wherever you go. And it's convenient, I think, to talk shit about people in poverty, to generalize people in poverty, and to perpetuate stereotypes about people in poverty, because people that live in poverty, in my opinion, oftentimes do not have the voice, are not given a chance to have the voice to speak for themselves, to clear the air. So it's easy to make judgments, like I said, perpetuate stereotypes, because that'll keep the status quo. And if you're, you know, some out of touch prick, ignorant prick, or a rich prick, and you're just, you know, perpetuate the stereotypes, then you're obviously done something right for yourself. So I don't know. It's just like you have to consider the source, you know. And I think West Virginia is a lot like Alaska in a lot of ways. Full disclosure, I've never been to Alaska. So what I mean is that, you know, we are a state with a ton of unique natural beauty and a small population compared to like all the mountains and all the land that we have. There aren't a lot of people here, you know. We don't have a city the size of Anchorage, that's for damn sure, but most of Alaska isn't like Anchorage either. But once again, you know, I bring that up because West Virginia does have amazing outdoor activities and amazing outdoors. But like Alaska, I don't hear people say, oh, Anchorage, that's not the real Alaska, or Barrow, that's not the real Alaska. You know, it's like people tend to look at it, seems like, other states as a whole and other areas as a whole. But with West Virginia, one of the biggest misconceptions that just drives me up the fucking wall, because it's so fucking ignorant. But then again, I was that ignorant person that was perpetuating the same school of thought because I was, you know, miserable in my own life. But when people say, oh, northern West Virginia, the prosperous parts of West Virginia, that's not the real West Virginia. There are you will hear that so many times. And what that's saying is, it's basically saying, in other words, West Virginia is a shithole, and any place that isn't a poverty-stricken shithole in West Virginia isn't really like West Virginia. I mean, because why isn't it the opposite? You know, why isn't it saying, oh, you know, the impoverished areas, or the areas that are the dying parts, the dying small, you know, coal town communities, or these impoverished communities, that's not the real West Virginia? Why isn't Morgantown, Wheeling, you know, the Eastern Panhandle, why isn't that the real West Virginia too? You know, because people like to and think it's totally acceptable to just you know, shit on West Virginia. It seems to be one of the few stereotypes, like West Virginia stereotypes, that are just like, people still do not blink an eye and find it totally acceptable to just continue to perpetuate. At least with a lot of other stereotypes, even if you're thinking it, you're kind of like, oh, keeping it to yourself, or maybe thinking twice. But from celebrities, politicians, you know, anybody that's a household name does not think twice to shit on West Virginia, and still you know, Bette Midler did it just a couple months ago, you know, and it's 2022. And this multimillionaire, when was the last time she was in West Virginia or spent any real time? I mean, ever? You know, why did she shit on us? Because she got in her feelings about politicians. Fucking, no politician represents the average fucking person. Don't you fucking know that? No, you don't, because you're one of those rich, out of touch, probably miserable assholes like I was referring to. I truly believe that. The only people that perpetuate stereotypes and just spread hate and have nothing good to say about nobody are rich people, you know, miserable people, and or ignorant people. You know, West Virginia, we're not, the northern parts of the state are definitely prosperous, but we have a lot of really cute small towns that have almost like an artsy feel without the pretentious, you know, ness of maybe other areas. And we have like these amazing outdoors too. And there's like something to be said for nature. There really is. I used to think it was overrated because it's all I've ever known, but you know, just it's amazing. Like when you really look at it, and the fact that I can like take the dog for a walk and go by this like amazing lake every day and go in the mountains, and now I'm watching the leaves change, and like I'll see deer and I'll see, you know, rabbits and squirrels and chipmunks, and it's just really incredible. And you know, people go their whole lives without having that. And then let's see. So that's like the biggest one for me is when people are like, oh, that's not the real West Virginia. The good, the bad, and the ugly, just like everywhere, is the real West Virginia. You know, the prosperous parts are, and the not so prosperous parts. I mean, it's like, it'd be like saying, oh, you know, the worst parts of any major city, or the nice parts, it'd be like, oh, Beverly Hills, Hollywood, Rodeo Drive, that's not the real LA. Manhattan, that's not the real New York City. You know, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, there's like amazing things, and there are amazing people. Another thing too is like, there's this, kind of idea that like people are really pushy with religion, with their way of life, with politics, and that's like not true. And honestly, from my experience, it's kind of the polar opposite. You know, I mean, it's like a real just kind of fucking live and let live, like take care. You know, you're doing your own thing. And first off, when you are struggling financially, when you are poor, when you are actually having to work to put food on the fucking table, to keep a fucking table, if you like really want to get real, when you're, you know, working to live day in, day out, you don't have time to try to preach to anybody else or convert anybody else or try to change anyone's beliefs. When you're really like working and have to work to, you know, provide for your family. It seems to be a lot of times the people who, you know, have it real fucking cushy, they're the ones that are trying to convert. And you know, and I can't stand a fucking Bible thumper. I can't. I can't stand that shit. Okay, but you know, if politics is your religion, I mean, you're still fucking pushing that shit as hard as you can go too. You know, we just need to get back to, I think, what I always thought like being liberal was, and open-minded and actually progressive. What I still think being progressive actually is live and let live. Like you love who you want to love, be who you want to be, live how you want to live, as long as it don't hurt anybody else. I mean, it's like just as simple as that. You know, this whole thing of like, oh, well, if you're, I don't know, people just seem so much more judgmental now, and it doesn't feel like, I'm just like a political party refugee. I'm like disgusted with like all of our politicians, but I don't know. I just really wanted to say that. I read a comment, I watched a video on like, it was like the top 5 best towns to live in West Virginia the other day. It was a really short video. And I was expecting to be disappointed, but I actually found myself like pleasantly surprised. I thought it was really accurate. And I liked how they did not just focus on strictly the northernmost parts of the state. And I really liked that. And I was reading the comments. They also talked about like Charleston, for example, and they had Fairmont, you know, but like Lewisburg's an amazing town that wasn't even like listed. There's like a bunch of like really cute, quirky, historical, kick-ass like mountain towns with like a ton of outdoor activity. You know, Summerville and Fayetteville are awesome. Like they have a, you know, there's 4 seasons, which is incredible. So there's like skiing and whitewater rafting, but it's just a lot of like beautiful nature. And there's something like, there's a truthfulness in nature that I just think is undeniable, you know. And when you spend a lot of time or any time in nature and like really just try to like get immersed in, you know, where you're at, like outdoors in nature, like away from people, to where you can just like hear the birds and kind of like hear yourself think too. There's like, you know, an honesty and like this wisdom in nature that just makes sometimes like the hustle and bustle and like the lights and glitz and glamour of a city almost seem like synthetic, you know. Like it's like a copy of something, or they're trying to do like a synthetic version of something that was like once real. It's like an imitation, you know. And nature, it's like the truth, you know. It's not an imitation, and you can feel that. I think that's like good for your soul to connect like that. And with people that have been raised in the mountains and raised in like some of the, because West Virginia has like the oldest, some of the oldest, if not the oldest mountains in the whole fucking world. When you have like generations of people, and there's such a rich, unique history to West Virginia too, and you have so many people that have lived in the mountains for decades, years, if not their entire life, you know, the people have kind of, I think, absorbed some of that authenticity and absorbed some of the wisdom, some of like the older ways in terms of like plant medicine and stuff. Not like, you know, trippy plant medicine like ayahuasca or anything, but I wish. But, you know, just like what plant is good to put on like a burn or whatever. Like people just tend to know that stuff, and that's amazing, you know. And also just one final thought here. Something that's really misunderstood about West Virginia, I think too, is that we're looked at as kind of like a backwards, like I said, redneck. We all know the stereotypes, like hillbilly state, like we're like judgmental or something, and it's the total fucking opposite. From our inception, like the whole entire reason we are a state, and you'd be shocked, side note, how many people do not even know literally West Virginia is a state. Like, so many people think I'm saying like Western Virginia, and I know that because I did like basically call center telemarketing in for two different companies in the past. And so many people would be like, oh, your accent, where are you from? Texas? I'm like, no, why do you keep saying that? But people would be like, oh, you're from Western Virginia. I'm like, no, dickhead, West Virginia. We're like our own state. But people, and I got a lot of jokes and stereotypes on the phone too, talking to like random strangers. Oh God. But something people don't really take into account is the whole reason West Virginia is a state is because we didn't fucking want slavery, okay? I mean, we did not want to do that shit anymore. That's Virginia's deal. That's why we are not Virginia. We are West Virginia. Because we didn't want to keep doing, like, the fucking most archaic, backwards, piece of shit. You know, my God. We didn't want to be no part of that. No, you know, any part of that. So that's, like, a little fun fact, you know. And when you really start to, like, look deeper at, not the words of people, but, like, the history of states and of, you know, politicians, too. Like, stop listening to their words. That's something that's been huge for me. And be just like, okay, well, actually, actions speak louder. With a politician, action's the only thing that speaks, you know. Their words are, like, as meaningful as, like, a used car salesman, you know. let's just look at their actions. And when you look at a politician's actions, like pick a politician, you're going to be like shocked, you know, because they're all just like such fucking pieces of shit. But anyway, I guess that's pretty much all I'm going to say about West Virginia. I had a couple other points, but let's wrap it up. Y'all have a good night.